Good evening and welcome to Solidarity on Tap. My name is Chris Kerr with the Ignatian Solidarity Network, and on behalf of everyone at ISN, as well as our national Solidarity on Tap sponsors, Jesuit Volunteer Corps, Jesuit Volunteer Corps Northwest, Mary Noel Lay Missioners, and the Association of Jesuit Colleges and Universities, as well as the Center for Global Education and Experience at Augsburg University, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's great to have you with us. For over 15 years, the Ignatian Solidarity Network has been uniting the Ignatian family, meaning the Jesuit network, as well as all those who are inspired to work for justice through the spiritual tradition of St. Ignatius of Loyola, to build a more just world through transformational programs and resources that deepen faith and lead to dismantling systematic injustice, collaborative initiatives that bridge divides and overcome exclusion, and collective action to defend and promote the inherent dignity of all God's creation, both people and planet. If you haven't already, please make sure to check out our website, ignatiansolidarity.net, and like and follow us on social media to get the latest advocacy alerts, educational resources, and much more. Now, of course, many of you know us if you've been joining us, for Solidarity on Tap over the past year or so. But for those joining us for the first time, if you're out there, let me give you the background on Solidarity on Tap. It didn't always happen like this, okay? Way back in pre-COVID times, Solidarity on Tap usually took place in cities across the country, bringing together members of the Ignatian family in local bars and pubs. Powerful speakers addressed crowds of people from across the Ignatian network in their local community, and they really put the social in social justice. But like many things, we moved virtual in late March 2020, and it was a lot of fun back then, so we thought we'd keep doing it, including in 2021. And even though we're gathering virtually, the goal of Solidarity on Tap is the same: to invite people to enjoy fellowship, maybe with a drink in hand, and to hear powerful reflections from members of the network engaged in work for justice. And as always, in order to build and enjoy community tonight, even in this virtual space, I want to encourage you to utilize the comment section on Facebook or YouTube, or post to Twitter or Instagram with the hashtag ISNLive to let us know you and your institution are represented here this evening. All right. You can also post your comments and questions for our guest speaker this evening on either Twitter or Facebook. We want to hear from you. We want to know you're out there, right? Now, Solidarity on Tap conversations are typically a carefully curated recipe of serious conversation filled with opportunities to learn and grow in both heart and mind, sprinkled with some moments of humor, and always carried out with a vision of a hope-filled future. So with this in mind, I'm really excited to introduce our guest tonight, Miriam Uribe. Miriam is a proud Mexican immigrant raised in California and is currently living in Brooklyn, New York, with her college friends and her cat, Luna. Currently, Miriam works at the National Domestic Workers Alliance, NDWA, as the special assistant to the senior field director. Her role allows her to have a bird's eye view of the field projects happening at a national level and work directly with NDWA's national worker councils. Prior to her time with NDWA, Miriam was a workers' rights advocacy coordinator at Take Root Justice, where she was co-chair of TRJ's union and helped negotiate the organization's first collective bargaining agreement. In 2017, Miriam was an organizer at the Workers' Justice Project, where she helped develop a hiring hall for women day laborers. Miriam is a graduate of the University of San Francisco. She graduated in 2017 with a BA in Politics and Latin American Studies. During her undergraduate career, she gained organizing experience, through the fight to make her alma mater become a more inclusive and supportive space for undocumented students. She was the co-founder of Undocu Week at USF and helped advocate for the Magis Fellowship, a scholarship fund dedicated to undocumented students. And Miriam continues to support the USF community as a member of the university's Latinx Alumni Society board. So we're so excited to have Miriam with us tonight. Welcome, Miriam. We're, great to have you here. Great to see you. Cheers. I think you've got a drink there in hand.
Cheers. Hi, everybody, and thanks, Chris, for having me. I'm really, really excited. I was able to go to Solidarity on Tap in New York back in the day, so I'm super excited.
That's right. You remember it, the real thing.
Yeah,
We are so hoping that the real thing returns, soon. And I know a lot of folks out there, as we gather tonight, we know that people are still struggling with this virus, with the pandemic, and we know that communities are working really hard to make sure that people are getting vaccinated and taking care of themselves and stuff like that. So, but it's great to have you and I. It's honestly, like, I don't know if we've had a Solidarity on Tap guest in a while who actually has been to a Solidarity on Tap, because we haven't done it in so long. So it's nice to have it. And how is this? How have you fared during this pandemic, this time of, it's been very, very challenging for a lot of folks. What's it been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, thankfully for me, I feel very lucky. I was a work from home, right? So I didn't really struggle as much, but I was living in New York City, which was the hotspot, right?
Yeah.
So I remember in March where people were still not taking the pandemic seriously, but me being in New York, we would hear ambulances like 24/7. Like you hear a lot of like ambulances anyway,
Right.
a city, but it was 24/7, and just the city, the vibe was so heavy. It was so like it looked so sad. Everything looked so gloomy. I don't know. It looked like gray, even though it was sunny and like nice and like it was the summer. Everything looked like that, and because of my job, I had to talk to a lot of workers who were really, really, really struggling. So I think I was myself personally like really lucky again, because I had healthcare, I had work from home days, like that I could stay home all the time, but I was also connected to people on the ground. So that was very intense.
Yeah. What were some of the things as you talked with folks who are kind of out in the world trying to kind of struggling to maybe find work or to sustain work and things like that? What were some of the stories you heard or things that you encountered as you talked with folks?
Yeah. So for example, for a lot of folks who were domestic workers, who were house cleaners, a lot of them, one of my really good, she was my work mom at Workers Justice Project. And then after I left, she's still like my work mom. She's in Florida now, but she like lost a lot of her jobs, right? Like people didn't want folks coming in. And that was her sole source of income. So folks didn't want folks to come in and clean their houses. Then we had the opposite, where house cleaners are being called to clean the houses, but weren't offered protections, right? So they were putting themselves in danger, going to clean folks' houses that had the privilege of working from home, or like they wanted them to take care of their kids, because working parents have it really difficult because you're working, but your child is also next to you and they also need attention. And then the other thing we also saw was that New York has so many restaurants, so we started seeing restaurants, shutting down, delivery workers, cooks were losing their jobs. And because at that point I was working around wage theft, we were just seeing, like a lot of employers who had stolen wages were now using our restaurant's closed, we can't pay workers anyway. So it was very interesting to see that, and just how there was no safety net, right? For unemployment, right? Even though unemployment was really hard for folks that were able to access it, to even receive it, a lot of folks didn't even have that as a safety net, which was really, really, really hard on a lot of people.
Yeah, and even I would think even for folks that could access it, I mean, it seemed like the system was really strained just in terms of managing the number of people that were seeking assistance. Even if one knew what they needed to do, was able to get into the system, but like,
oh yeah, there was a backlog of like months and months, like weeks and weeks. Sorry, I mean sometimes it hit months where folks did not get their unemployment paycheck. And I feel like we, like a lot of us have known this, and folks that live this lived experience have known this forever, that the systems are just not working or are very backlogged. But I think this just highlighted that, right? And it brought people into the system that maybe hadn't thought about how difficult it was to live here. So it was definitely intense.
Yeah. Miriam, I want to ask you a little bit about how you got to be doing the work you do. But before you do that, I wanted to, before we talk about that, I would just make sure we give some shout outs to some folks who've joined us tonight. So I want to welcome Mary Kay is joining us from Columbia, Maryland. Welcome, Mary Kay. And Ronald says, saludos from Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome. Kate Carter says, hello, friends. Excited to hear Miriam tonight, former USF colleague and admission. I like the little play on the word admission. Very nice, Kate. Welcome. Good to see you. And then let's see. Marlee says, greetings from Ronald, Washington. So welcome to Marlee as well. So great to have some folks with us. Now, Miriam, you have this extensive resume. I mean, I think about like graduating 2017 from USF, but really been in the mix of as a worker rights advocate since then. How did you get there? What are some things that were part of your life experience that led you to want to be doing this work and to be so deeply engaged in this work today?
Yeah, totally. So I'm a Daca recipient, and I guess that's one of the big things that really politicized the way I looked at everything. Living with a mixed status family, mostly undocumented, at that point where I was growing up. For the longest time, when I got to college, I thought I wanted to go into immigration law, and like I thought that was going to be my career, right? Like I was going to go to undergrad, and then I was going to go to law school, and then I was going to be an immigration attorney, and that was going to be how I supported my community. And then I worked at a solo practitioner's office in San Francisco, and I realized really fast that that was really hard, and it was really hard work. And I have so much respect for people that are still doing that and organizing, but for me, I knew that it was going to be really, really hard. So it was a difficult decision. And I sat down and I started thinking, what are other ways that I can support my community, that I also support myself and my mental health and like my capacity and my sustainability as an advocate, right? And I remember I always talk about Professor Kathleen Cole. I remember being in her class and learning about the domestic worker history, especially in San Francisco with Mujeres Unidas y Activas, and talking about workers, the intersection of workers and immigration, right? And then I started connecting a lot of my life to that, right? My parents were workers. They were also immigrants. And because they were undocumented workers, they were exploited to like the max, because at that point, I didn't know that my parents had rights. My parents didn't know that they have rights as like workers. And things just kind of started clicking, like, oh my God, like, even if someone doesn't have status, if you can't adjust your status, you're still going to be a worker. Even if I stayed in the US and became a citizen, I'm still going to be a worker. Even if I go back to Mexico, I'm still going to be a worker. Wherever you are, you're a worker, right? For the most people are just workers their whole lives. We are workers. We work. We live in the system. And I started thinking more about, oh my God, if my mom knew the rights that she had, even though she was undocumented, but the rights that she had as a worker, if my dad knew the rights he had as a worker, even though he was undocumented, I think things would have been really, really different in the ways that they lived their lived experience, right? So I said, this is a way that I can have a positive or I can have an impact, a more meaningful impact personally in my community, is organizing workers, letting workers know, even if they're undocumented, that they have rights. And then this idea or this consciousness of you're a worker, but the workers are what makes things move. would stay, right? Even if they had to leave, even if like hopefully never get deported, but if they were, they still have this consciousness of being a worker and how they can create solidarity with their fellow workers to create change in their workplace. So that's kind of what led me to be in the workers' rights movement. And then just seeing myself as a worker as well, right? And what does that mean? And that's when things kind of just started falling into place, one by one.
Yeah. And as you've delved kind of deeper into this work, working with a couple different organizations and different roles in organizations, what are some of the things that you see that are consistently challenging people as workers? Because as you note, like we all, majority of us, that's a part of our life, right? That's why the Catholic Church teaches so much about the dignity of work, because it's something that we all need to do to help sustain not only ourselves but society. But what are some of the things that you see consistently people are challenged by as workers?
Yeah, so something that I've seen both as a worker and also for the folks that I advocate for and advocate with, is a lot of the times our time, right? Or like seeing, putting in so much time for not that much, like not being paid for our labor, whether that is extra hours, right? The overtime hours that you're getting paid, or working on things that are not in your job description, and like being asked to do so much more than what's in your job description, to the point where you are then kind of burnt out, right? Like the burnout. Some of us have the privilege, right, of stepping away from those situations where that it's causing burnout, and you just feel like you're like exploited or whatever. Some folks don't have that. Sometimes those opportunities to leave. The other thing I see, right, is the importance of just having a supportive environment where you feel that your work is valued. You can feel it, that you can see the value, right, when you're getting paid for your labor, but also just being told, right, like your work is valuable. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Like, what else can I do for you? And also paid time off to be with our loved ones, to take care of our needs. That's such a huge blessing, right? Like I remember my mom barely had any paid time off. If she was going to take time off, a lot of the times it wasn't paid, which means that she didn't really have time off because you're working paycheck to paycheck. So paid time off is super important, especially for your mental health, your well-being, childcare. So that's something that I also see, right? Like through every job industry, this paid time off is so valuable, that those of us that do have it, I'm the biggest advocate for using your paid time off because it is part of your compensation package. So it's part of, it's a way that your work is it's being paid for, right? Like your work is valuable. Take the paid time off. Like obviously, check in with your supervisor, all that, but take care, like use it because it is part of the compensation package. And I've also seen how after being in a union and part of a union, the importance of having unions and having that sense of solidarity with your fellow worker is not something that you can see in every workplace, but it's something that can change your workplace so much because you feel so much more supported, and just know that you were protected, and that there are steps that have to go before anything happens to you. Having your union siblings look out for you, I think it's also really, really important. And then lastly, like healthcare is also super important. Healthcare shouldn't be tied to work because as we saw in the pandemic, a lot of people lost their jobs, which means that they lose their healthcare. And folks don't realize, how important sometimes healthcare is. I didn't have a lot of healthcare growing up, we didn't really have it until I was almost finishing with high school. So seeing like my parents, if you got a cold, if you got anything, you really didn't go to the doctor until like things got really bad. But then now after having healthcare, I was like, this is so different than going to like a clinic, right? Like I don't have to take a whole day to go to the clinic and wait and hope that like you are seeing, like you have a doctor and like you don't have to pay hella money, all of that. But with the pandemic, we saw how dangerous that can be, because folks with chronic illnesses or folks that just need to go to the doctor, they need to take their families to the doctor, it has to be tied to work, and it's not always the best, right? We see the discrepancies there too, which is wild and something that we really, really need to change, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we put a lot of we put a lot of responsibility on employers to facilitate something that most of our country thinks should be a right, not a privilege, right? And then for employers to navigate that and do that justly, and it's challenging. So I mean, we definitely have to rethink our system. Now, you talked a little bit about, you kind of cited your mom and remembering your mom's experience, and you talked a little bit about your family. Are there things that even more specifically you see for immigrant workers in today's world that are even more unique challenges that they face?
Yeah, definitely. Something that I saw a lot was a fear of retaliation with deportation. So specifically for women and undocumented immigrant women, you see that a lot in sorry, am I echoing? Okay, I'm done. You see that a lot in, for example, sexual harassment cases where undocumented women are harassed. And when they want to speak up, a lot of employers use the fact that they're undocumented to instill fear and tell them, you say anything, I'm going to call ICE on you and your family. Or you see it in wage theft cases, right? I'm not going to pay you. You don't have papers. I don't have to pay you. You don't even have to be here. And you see that employers taking advantage of that. They would never say that to, like someone that they know has a green card or a work permit or something like that. They would never be like, oh, I'm not going to pay you because you don't have citizenship, or you have citizenship, I'm not going to pay you. You never hear that. But for undocumented workers, that's something that is kind of held against them, even though they do have protections. You can never be 100% sure that you're going to be able to protect them from the employer and ICE coming. It's very low chance, but you can never be 100% sure. And I think that's the scariest part. The other thing is that workers tend to also not have benefits that a lot of citizens have. So for example, when I think of like my dad or a lot of the domestic workers that I'm friends with, as they're getting older, they don't have a retirement fund. They don't have like Medicaid and these things that, even if it's very little, a lot of folks that do have citizenship or residency can think of it and think of that. So I think that's a big thing of just retaliation by using like deportation, which instills fear and instills really toxic environments.
Yeah, and I think what you're pointing out too is kind of this idea of like kind of the snowball effect of when someone is in a bad work situation, that perpetuates for a lifetime, right? Like you mentioned, kind of even like the idea of like retirement or any sort of development of a fund that would help someone as they move into their later years of life. And for so many young people in the world today, graduating from college, that's kind of a given, right? They're going to have a 401k or a 403b, and that's the mentality people take. But for so many workers in our society, that's not a part of, and so that they're going to face the challenge of that for many years and later in life, and it's we perpetuate a bad system, over generation over generation, right?
Yeah, definitely. And like
Yeah.
that's the thing you also saw, right, with a lot of Latinx and Black elders who were the most vulnerable, right? And folks kind of talking about, oh, well, it's just for old people. Coronavirus is just for old people. Oh my God, it's just that is like such a big slap on the face to our elders, right? And a lot of them don't have the privilege of like isolating or going to the doctor when they were sick. So we see how all these things are just so interconnected. If you have a job that didn't have health insurance, you're not, that everything just kind of was highlighted even more during the pandemic, which we shouldn't have got into a pandemic to have these things highlighted. But on the other side, this is a perfect opportunity for folks to start plugging in and like really supporting workers, right? As a whole.
Yeah. I mean, you're exactly right. Like it's sad that we've had to have such a drastic and horrific event in our society, but it has created the opportunity to kind of look at what was broken, what is broken, and what kind of society do we want to build, and what do we really hope for ourselves and each other, our community. There's so much. It's illuminated how much work there is, how much work there is to do. Now, Miriam, you mentioned you're a Daca recipient, and Daca has been something that people read about in the news on a regular basis. It's something that political leaders talk about a lot, and I'd be curious just to hear your reflections on what it's been like for you, kind of living through all that in real time. When many people read about it, they're not concerned about how it will directly impact them, right? But for you, the next news article about DACA in the paper has a direct impact. What's that been like, especially the past few years, where I know we welcomed you to speak at a press conference about a year and a half ago, about the Supreme Court decision related to DACA and kind of sustaining the DACA program at the time. But what's that been like for you?
Yeah, so DACA was introduced when I was about to be a senior in high school. So I was really, really, really fortunate that I had DACA throughout college, right? Well, I got DACA around the second semester of my freshman year. That gave me a huge advantage compared to like my undocumented elders that went through college without DACA and had to kind of figure out themselves very differently. I was also super lucky. I lived in California, and the California DREAM Act passed around the same time, which meant that I got like $10,000 in grants, which is a huge help. And I was able to work on campus, to have really great jobs. Like with Kate, I was an admissions intern at USF. I had really great opportunities. I was an advisor. And that was all thanks to the fact that I could show like, I have a work permit, you can hire me, and I can be on payroll. So that was a huge blessing. At the same time, it was a Band-Aid solution because every 2 years I had to save up for $195 to renew my DACA. Now with DACA, you have to renew every 2 years, but they always recommend to send it in around 3 months before your work permit expires, or even more than that. So sometimes it gets approved and it eats out months. So right now I think it's eaten out a whole year. So I've paid for a whole year that I didn't get to use my work permit. And when I was a senior in college, Trump got elected. And that was really, really hard because I had a lot of plans of, being able to do fellowships abroad. And with DACA, under Obama, you used to be able to travel abroad through work, humanitarian, or educational purposes. So my plans kind of came crumbling down. And I went into like a super deep depression because I was like, what was the point of me coming to college, working so hard, working full-time, going to school full-time, if I'm not even going to be able to use my work because my work permit is getting taken away. But I had to, ground myself. I was so lucky to have so many people who were super supportive. I remember we went to lobby that November to like with ISN and the teach-in. So it was just like remembering, like, you know what, my parents never had papers and they're still thriving. Like all the people I work with don't have papers and they're still surviving here. Like we'll figure out a way. We'll make it work. but it was still the constant state of, I don't know how my life is going to look in 2 years after this work permit expires. So I think that affects, with the other undocumented folks that have DACA, when we talk, it does affect how you think of long-term planning. Like, I think I still don't know if I see myself in the United States long-term. I am turning 27 this year, and like, I really, really wanted to travel abroad. Like, I really wanted to see more of the world. I wanted to go back to my home country and go back to like Bolivia, because I got the opportunity to go and just explore, right? There's so much more to the world in the United States. And I think for me, that's still like difficult. The other thing too is my parents were sold the American dream of like, you come to the United States, you go to college, and then like you'll be set. And that's not the reality for a lot of people. And that's not a reality for us. Like, healthcare is still not a human right. Like, it's not a basic right? People are in incredible debt. You see police brutality still happening and being more rampant than ever. You see all these things. So it was a lot of reflecting of, this is my home. This is all I remember. I've been here since I was 8, but it doesn't affect, it's kind of kicking me out in a weird way. I wouldn't see myself in Mexico. My town is extremely violent. It's been taken over by cartels. There's like dead people on the street, and it's like normal at this point when I talk to my grandma or my cousins. And I am also a woman. In Mexico, there are, and all Latin America, most recently a big case in Puerto Rico, there's femicides, right? Women are just killed for existing. Here too, but it's not as rampant, right, as in Mexico, where there's literally nothing. Like, you'll just go missing and it'll be another day. So it's a weird feeling of, this is all I know, but like, there's so much things to change. I want to quit, but I also want to fight for it. So it's always just conflicting feelings. And it's hard to work through. There are days where I'm like, I'm gonna stay here forever. I'm gonna get a house. I'm gonna like do everything. And there are days where I'm like, I'm gonna just buy a cottage in a random place in like Norway or something, So it's always conflicting, but I think we make the best of it. We find community. I think I nourish myself just like seeing how much work has been done and how much more work there is to be done. And then I'm like grounded back into being like, okay, we're here. We have resources, we have privileges that we can use to make the world a better place for the next generation, for my brother, for my sister, and even for my mom, right? I want to make sure that generation before me can also live better. And what can I do to do that? And even, after Trump is gone, DACA still DACA. It's still only 2 years. Folks sometimes can't afford DACA. It's a temporary solution. And also people that fought for DACA, some of them weren't able to apply for it. Some of them haven't gotten the privilege of applying or having a work permit, even though they put their bodies on the line, even though they organized throughout their whole youth for it, and then they didn't qualify. So it's also this weird thing of, okay, like, I am grateful for this, but also this is not enough. Also, like, everybody deserves to have a work permit at least. I think everyone deserves just the citizenship, right? Because we're making this country run. So what do we do? And we don't want citizenship while we are funding the militarization of the border. Like, what's the point of that? Like, I don't want folks to be in so much danger just for me to have citizenship. So it's always really conflicting and really hard, especially when you think of everybody, that so many people of us, more than 11 million of us, are in this boat in very different circumstances. At the same time, DACA allowed me to go to college, and that's a privilege, so it's always so complicated, and there's so many layers, and it's so nuanced. So if you see something that's not nuanced, or not, like, there's not a lot of layers to it, ask yourself, who am I talking to? Like, who else do I need to talk to? Who's not included in this table? And yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point, the complexity of it all. But also, well, one, thank you for kind of taking time to unpack what that looks like for you, and to really kind of look at that, through your eyes for a second. As I say, like I think in the mix of the news cycle, when people see, especially, and there's a lot of talk always about immigration policy, um, and I think, in many corners of our country, we struggle to look at it through a lens other than our own. So, thank you so much. I know you've been continuing to do some work with USF, and I want to make sure we get a chance to talk about that. We're going to take a quick break to share a little bit about our sponsors and some other things coming up. So hold on, take another sip of that drink, and we'll be right back. All right, Miriam? Okay. While Miriam's getting a drink, I want to tell you some things that are going on. All right. Now, regular Solidarity on Tap viewers may have noticed that this week we are premiering a new logo. Actually, I think we even premiered it last time we had Solidarity on Tap, but maybe you missed it. So if you haven't seen the new logo, check it out. In fact, it's right here on my very cool Solidarity on Tap pint glass. All right. You can now attend virtual Solidarity on Tap, or even relive your favorite in-person moments with your very own pint glass. All right. Come complete with a timely reminder from Pope Francis of our call to justice and solidarity. The pint glasses are union made right here in the United States, and they are available on our store. And you can go to igsolnet, that's igsol.net/store, and order yours today. Order one for your friend as well, so you can watch Solidarity on Tap. And then when Solidarity on Tap is happening in person, bring your pint glass with you, and we'll work it out with the bar or the pub. Don't worry. Okay. Secondly, the Ignatian Family Teaching for Justice is going hybrid this year. That's right. You or your delegation from a high school, a college, a parish can join us safely with COVID limitations and restrictions in Washington, D.C. this November. Or you can join us online in October. Check out all the details at ignatiansolidarity.net/IFTJ. In-person registration is currently full, but we are hopeful that capacity will expand as time goes on. So join the waiting list, and you'll get your updates on what's going on with the waiting list there. And again, that website is ignatiansolidarity.net/IFTJ. If you don't know, the Teach-In is the largest annual Catholic social justice conference in the country each year. Now let me tell you about our sponsors. Mary No Lay Missioners work intentionally with those at the margins for a more just, compassionate, and sustainable world, and you can learn more about their work at mklm.org. That's mklm.org. The Center for Global Education and Experience at Augsburg University believes that education can create a more just and sustainable world, achieved by providing global immersive experiences in Latin America, Southern Africa, Palestine, and virtually. Sharing the Jesuit vision of educating whole persons of solidarity, CGEE has worked with Boston College, Fordham University, and Miriam's alma mater, the University of San Francisco, among many others. Students who value social justice and solidarity will find a home studying migration in Mexico, the legacy of liberation theology in Central America, or decolonization in Southern Africa. They're still accepting applications for their fall semester programs, and they're offering free airfare for all students who apply by June 15th. Interested students can visit augsburg.edu/global. Next up is JVC Northwest. A year of service in the Pacific Northwest focused on the core values of community, simple living, social and ecological justice, and spirituality and reflection are all part of JVC Northwest. Their Jesuit volunteers live together in intentional community and serve in a variety of full-time roles at local partner organizations in Alaska, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, and Washington. Volunteers are also eligible for an AmeriCorps Education Award. You can learn more about becoming a Jesuit volunteer at jvcnorthwest.org/join. And if you have an organization, a nonprofit organization that's interested in hosting a JV, you can go to that website, jvcnorthwest.org, and click on Host a JV. And finally, the Association of Jesuit Colleges and Universities is pleased to sponsor tonight's Solidarity on Tap and to share a new resource for Jesuit colleges and universities. It is entitled Eyes to See, and it is an anti-racism examen designed for boards of trustees, administrators, faculty and staff, and others to learn how to make their institutions more anti-racist. A key visual component of Eyes to See is a new video featuring voices and images from across the Jesuit network, expressing their hopes for building more racially just cultures and communities. You can learn more about Eyes to See and view the video at ajcunet.edu/eyes-to-C, or just go to their website. I'm sure you'll find it. Okay. And finally, we hope you'll join us for our next Solidarity on Tap. It'll be our final Solidarity on Tap until the fall. We'll be hosting Patrick St. Jean, a Jesuit regent who is the author of a forthcoming book entitled The Spiritual Work of Racial Justice, a Month of Meditation with Ignatius of Loyola. It'll be published this summer, and we're really excited to welcome Patrick and hear about the book. Mark your calendars. This event will take place on Tuesday. Normally we gather on Wednesdays, but this will be on Tuesday, May 18th. And so just keep that in mind, not Wednesday, but Tuesday, okay? And you can learn more at igsol.net. That's igsol.net/SOT, all right? And if you like the conversation this evening with Miriam, which has been great, and want to share it or watch it again, this and all the previous videos are available at ignatiansolidarity.net or on our YouTube and Facebook pages. You can go back and find all of them, all the way back to our first virtual Solidarity on Tap back in March 2020. And if you enjoy Solidarity on Tap, please consider giving a gift to sustain the work of the Ignatian Solidarity Network. You can text the word donate to 888-476-20004. And last but not least, if you're an Instagrammer, if you're on Instagram, I guess is a better way to say it, you can share a picture of yourself watching or having a Zoom virtual watch party to your Instagram account and tag at Ignatian Solidarity and use that hashtag ISN Live. We would love to feature your photo in our next Solidarity on Tap Instagram story. Okay, and now we're back with Miriam here. We've got some questions from folks and some comments. So first, this is from Mike. It says, "Hi, Mike from Iowa City, Iowa, and I like your shirt, but can't read all of it. What does it say, and where did you get it? Can you tell us about your shirt, Miriam?"
Great question, Mike.
You know, Mike? Is he getting paid for this? No, okay.
I support undocumented students, and then it has the USF logo. So it was for a fundraiser for the Magic Scholarship at USF, and they had a whole basketball game, and I happened to be in San Francisco that year at that time, and I bought it there. And it was for a great cause, which is the Magic Scholarship.
So let's talk about, since we're on the topic, let's talk about the Magic Scholarship. Can you tell us a little bit more about your involvement with that? How exactly it works, and we can post the link then as well in social media. So if folks want to learn more, they can visit the USF website. So why don't you tell us about it, Miriam?
Yeah, definitely. So when I got to the University of San Francisco, there was not a lot of resources for undocumented students. This was back in 2013. So there was an undocumented student task force that was formed with faculty, staff, and students. We started doing a lot of advocacy around undocumented students, undocu-ally trainings, talking to administration about different processes, like not asking for students for their visas when they were registering for classes or things like that, or waiving their health insurance. And then on the student advocacy side, I was part of what formerly is known as MECHA, now it's called LUNA. We were inspired by Loyola Chicago, which had their own Magic Scholarship, which was a scholarship for undocumented students to be able to attend college, right? We as DACA students, TPS holders, or no status undocumented students, you can't apply for federal financial aid. So that means no, what's it called? Like the really popular one. Oh my God. But like any type of grant we can't get. We can't get loans, no student loans, none of that. So it's just institutional grants or loans. And those loans tend to be with really, really, really high interest. And usually a citizen has to co-sign, which is really hard for undocumented students to obviously have a citizen person to sign for them. So we wanted to bring that to USF. There was different ways that we tried to do that. We tried to just replicate exactly what Loyola Chicago did, which was it's $4 per student added to their tuition to raise those funds. That didn't really pass. So we kept going. And then at the end, the Student Senate decided that they had some funds that they could allocate to it. And now it's open. And I think people can donate to it now, as if with any other grant. But it really started as like a student initiative to make that push. Now I'm really happy. It took kind of the 4 years that I was there. And the first Magis Fellowship recipients were fall of 2017, which is after I graduated, but it's still going on. And it's really great. You get about $8,000 per semester, or per academic year, sorry, so $4,000 per semester. And then those funds are unrestricted, which is really important when we were fighting for this, because things like your DACA application, which is for $195, books that a lot of people use with their refund, right? When you get your student refund, you use that for books, or not for books. I've seen those people not use it for books. That Bad Bunny concert, yes, I've seen it. And things, things like airfare or bus to go see your family, a lot of things, right? Or housing. Housing is super expensive.
Every little bit helps. Yeah.
Housing is so expensive in the Bay Area. So we want it to be unrestricted, not just tuition. So that's really something really exciting. It's open for undergraduate students, because a lot of, the graduate school of education, the law school had their own thing going on, but there was not a lot for the undergrad students. So it's still on. I really hope that we can get bigger, to get more donors and sustained donors to be able to support more folks, especially because I mentioned recently, there's a big handful of students that no longer qualify for DACA. They're now going to college. So if you are a college administrator, or college administrators, I would ask you, what are you thinking of doing to support undocumented students that don't have TPS or don't have DACA? Are your scholarships open to people with no DACA or no TPS? That's super, super important to think about.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing a little bit about that. And it's exciting to see the way these kind of student-driven initiatives to create, to ensure that undocumented students have the same access that other students have on Jesuit college and university campuses. So thanks for your continued work. I mean, it would be easy to, after you graduate, kind of step away from it, right? But it's exciting to see your continued engagement and support of it. We got a couple other just comments. Mary Kay said, "Miriam, thank you. Your insight and leadership work is so inspiring." So thanks, Mary Kay. And Eliza says, "Thank you for your candor and sharing a little bit of your narrative with us." So thank you, Eliza, for joining us. And then our friends at the St. Mark Young Adult Ministry in Los Angeles said, "Thanks for all that you're doing. Is there any movement on federal legislation for domestic worker rights?" They said California has a domestic worker rights bill. What more can we be doing kind of at the federal level? You want to share anything on that or anything?
Yeah, I think you should be on the lookout, because I think the Federal Domestic Bill of Rights is going to be reintroduced pretty soon. So definitely, if you are an employer that employs domestic workers, Hand in Hand is a great organization to get plugged into. A lot of resources for domestic worker employers. NGWO is also a great resource to be a supporter and to be in the loop. There's going to be a lot of calls to action, so definitely go check it out. Put your email so you're in that email list. Follow them on social media, but definitely those calls to action, especially when it comes to lobbying, calling your representative, all of that is going to come soon. So yeah, and just always support, your local worker centers. I think that's super important. If you don't know if you have a worker center, you can Google like worker center, your city that you're in, and something might pop up. If you ever need your grass cut, your snow removal, cleaning, planning, worker centers are so great, and you'll be supporting your local economy. Like that's the best way to support your local economy, by supporting your worker center.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. Thanks, Miriam. And then I'm actually gonna. So normally we have a question we kind of finish with, but our common friend, Kate Carter, kind of posed a question that I think goes along with this. Usually we ask our guests, the kind of final question we ask is, what gives you hope? Well, I think Kate's question is kind of right along the same lines. What sustains you in your work? So, Miriam, what gives you hope, or what sustains you in the work that you're doing right now as a workers' rights advocate?
Yeah, definitely. I think the thing that sustains my work is thinking about my undocumented community, and how I used to always use the word like we are really resilient. And then I think poet, I think Yosimar Reyes, who's also an undocumented poet, talked about resiliency is kind of violent sometimes because you go through so much to be resilient. So we've been surviving, we've been doing it, we've been getting through it. But I want us to get to a point where we're no longer surviving, but really, really just like thriving in this country or wherever we are. And that sustains me. I want to see folks be able to explore their hobbies and not just think about work 24/7. And doing that work personally, going to therapy, doing like more physical exercise, just having free time to enjoy and explore who I am and my likes. That's something that everybody deserves to have, and we should all have. And I think that is like, when I think of the world and what sustains me and what I want to achieve, it's that. Thinking about, right, I just did my RCIA confirmation and first communion. That's like 2 weeks, like during Easter vigil. But when I was going through that, thank you. We were talking about that, right? We were talking about like heaven is on earth, and what does that mean? And to me, that means, right, like we have to build a world where folks can feel like it's heaven, can enjoy their time here, we need to take care of our environment because that's what God gave us. We need to take care of it. We're the shepherds of it. We need to take care of our neighbors. We need to make sure that they never go hungry, and not just have not only your basic needs covered, but be able to explore, be artistic, or sing, dance, read, be a writer, and have that time to truly enjoy our existence that God gave us. We weren't meant to work 40 hours a week. That's like a capitalist invention through the Industrial Revolution, right? We were meant to be together in community. And that's what sustains me. And it's sometimes people say it's idealistic, but I think you need to think outside the box. Even a 40-hour work week at points seemed like it was very idealistic. Having a 5-day weekend seemed to be an idealistic thing to think about, right? We need to think outside the box. We have to have imagination. Systems of oppression thrive on the fact that people will tell you that you're being idealistic, and we need to reject that idea. We need to always think about, what can I do? What is the best way to go? Let's do it, and let's get organized, and let's get to there.
I think sometimes in Ignatian terms, we'll talk about the idea of like that we can live most fully, like building a world where we can all live most fully. And I love how you articulated that, in that idea of trying to build a world where as much of heaven can exist on earth as possible. Thank you. That's beautiful, Miriam. Well, thank you so much, Miriam, for being with us tonight. We're really grateful for your work and for sharing a little bit of your of that work and your story with us. And I want to say thank you to everyone who joined us tonight for another virtual Solidarity on Tap. It's great to have you with us. Remember, if you liked what you saw tonight and you want to watch it again or watch the previous Solidarity on Tap, it's all there online. And don't forget to learn more about the Magis Fellowship at USF, and make sure to support ISN and to support the Magis Fellowship as well. So don't hesitate to do that. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Miriam. Have a great night.
Thank you. And sorry, I don't know if we're done, but any undocumented students, any undocumented folks that just want to connect, let's connect. Find me on Twitter. And yeah, let's help each other.
Thank you, Miriam. Thanks. All right.